Wow! Dune Anniversary update is finally here? That's crazy. Looks inside. Scheisse, why are there so many things to read through? Man, if there was a guy who had some recommended decks I could actually just copy and paste and actually just play the game instead, actually instead of reading this like I'm a PhD candidate or something. If you've just had that concern, then do not worry, because I, Corin, am here to solve them. What up, weebs? Good day, and today's video is not actually going to be about the rundown of the patch, because everyone's doing that, but rather what kind of decks I would recommend you to play on the first couple of days of the patch, you know? Get a good hold of what kind of things are going on, how you know, adjust to the new playstyles of things that were previously on the PT and are now on live. And today I have 5 decks to recommend to you, 3 of US's and 2 of Russia's, because I think, well, there is one more specialization. But anyways, let's get right into it. The first deck is actually going to be Marine Baltic, and this deck, the only thing that's it's designed for the center. Obviously, you have a lot of flexibility when it comes to like swapping between the newly buffed SD Scouts that actually have one extra spike. But since you're actually doing CQC, I would personally recommend running the SUV and the CQC Force Recon or Forcon. And the reason for that is because they also managed to buff the ACV, which used to be a 13 seated vehicle, now a 14. So the good thing about this is that you can put a squad of 6 CQC infantry, these are like combat recon, pair them with an assaultman, a small that was slightly nerfed, but they're still pretty good. Or you could do the same, like you could put these 2 squads inside an ACV and they're going to absolutely blast people. And so this is why I have a bunch of ACVs, and since they run at like what 100 speed, nothing's gonna stop this thing from just blasting up or just like knocking the doors down and just FBI opening up your opponent's front line. And you still have a secondary squad that you could bring in this deck. Like as you can see right here, I have a couple more reserve points. You can just slap a couple of Mechanizatia Kayaniki, whatever they're pronounced. They are a bit worse than the someone small, but they're still quite decent. Marines are totally up to you because they do not actually implement the durability changes on the PTE for infantry. Currently, they do still take less damage when they are panicked, but it's just a little bit less, not a lot. So Marines, like any infantry squad nowadays, if they get panicked, they still drop a lot of HP and still faster than live. So I think Marines are good, but in this deck, I think this cheaper squad is definitely worth pairing with the Combat Recon inside an ACV to roll around. On top of that, you also have access to Marine Raider CQC. This is also, you can also shove them inside an ACV, and also the newly buffed SOF, which is actually quite interesting. I'm not sure if this is a mistake, but now their dual purposes have a ground range of 800 meters and 300 pen. Uh, there's only one other squad in the game that can do this, and it doesn't even deal that much damage. That's the VDV Spetsnaz, but you know, anyways, um, the altitude range is a bug, so don't mind it so much. And the good thing about the squad is that you don't really have to risk yourself, because look at this. The only reason I'm not running the, what are they called? The spike short range, the short range spikes is because, where are they? Is because they equally have 800 meters range. They deal the same amount of damage. Sure, the Yelvayagu have more pen, but in reality, at that range, what you're trying to do is to basically chip away. Like this is 300 pen is enough to deal critical damage to your opponent's tanks and stuff. So, uh, to me, I think the SOF is like, since they're also direct shot, they shoot much faster. I mean, they fly faster too, and they also take less supplies. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter today, but. The idea is that I think SOF is going to be a really fantastic standoff squad, and they are comparable to the SSO standoff right now. So I think if you happen to need any kind of, like, if you happen to like have an open field in front of you and your opponents are like in a bunch of buildings, yes, you could take out the Catfay and just blast it, or you could use the SOF to slowly pick away, and then retreat back into the newly buffed or like reduced discounted Vilkas and have them quickly get resupply their depleted rocket launchers. So this is a really good squad. I think nowadays you should definitely use them compared to the Xylukai. People you only use to run the Xylukai, but remember, this is a good squad, but they are not a good CQC squad. They don't have shotguns, they don't have flashes, they don't have smokes. So that's it. Last but not least, we do have two extra like this is a weapon squad that somehow performs better than the cats themselves, but they are a 4-man only, so do be careful. If you do prefer to have a beefier squad, run the cat toes or the sabers or the dragons or the javelins. The man-pad squad is also quite important, and to me, I prefer the peel runs over anything else, over the groms. This is basically just the stinger. The reason for that is because if you happen to be in a US mirror, killer eggs actually now get one shot by anything that deals more than a damage. So peel runs are obviously better than the groms. They also have more range, so this is why. And for the IVs, I don't really use the CV90s because they don't have heat armor. They don't have a lot, and yes, they did get buffed now. So I mean, even though they did get buffed, I still don't think it's gonna justify paying 140 points for an IV that gets like 3 tapped by something else. No, and on top of that, we still haven't gone through the tanks. So to me, tanks in this deck is really impressive. You have the Leopard, which also got buffed. This gun is now even better. I mean, it's the same as the SEP right now, but yes, it did get a price increase. But to me, I think both of these tanks are really good. They really complement each other. So you used to have a really limited amount of tanks in Marines or Baltic alone, but these two paired together, 4 feels just enough. And to me, I would prefer using the Leopard, giving it a bit more APS and kind of stuff because it has more vision range. And standoff wise, it doesn't really have the amount of like HMGs and machine guns that actually engage in close range, even though the Feb has less armor. But like, both are good, you know, both are good, I think. To me, I think the Leopard can also be used as a CQC tank, but that's all totally up to you. So like you have a bit of flexibility here, and a reserve tank. Although you could just end up using the CEV. This one just blasts infantry. Yeah, it's 50% ignore cover ignoring capabilities are also pretty nice. So, anyways, in the vehicle tab, I would only use like the FEPs and the Leopards as my MBTs. Also, I do think that the newly like the new sneak ability on the ATGMs are impressive, but not that not that impressive. Uh, because like most of US's and Russia's ATGMs are actually just semi-active. So if you actually wanted to try using this mechanic, I recommend you using sneak on the Gehwagen spike because this is terminal guidance. So you can just fire and then you can immediately run away. So what you want to do is you hold sneak next to a building and then you attack move it, or like you just hold it right there. So the moment it fires, it gets spotted, but then you don't need to keep line of sight. You just retreat behind the building. So I think if you want to try it out, you don't actually need the Lav AT, and the spike actually has pretty decent range as well, 1600. So if you want to try out, try the Gehwagen and spike. And then for the support tab, not much has actually changed besides packs. I mean, all SAMs have less range, but they also have 0 aim time, so it's not really, nothing has really changed. I think, yeah, nothing here is actually changed in particular besides the fact that smokes last shorter, but you have everything here. You have everything here. You have howitzers that are like the code that is pretty solid. If you want the Panzerhaubitze, feel free. Like both are good. Catfay is absolutely classic. They did have their resupply time nerfed by almost doubled, but not doubled. If you prefer the mid-click as a better fire support, then I definitely recommend this as well. But if you just, if you're new to the game or you just want to have a better time playing the game and uh, making your opponent suffer, then definitely go for the Catfay. Last but not least, I think the heli tab is the only thing that I want to note is that you could try doing Osprey insertions now. You could basically fly them low altitude at 500 speed, oh, maybe not at 500 speed, but up to your front line, and even if you get shot down, a lot of things inside will still survive. So this is definitely worth trying out. I haven't tried it out myself because I've been making this video in decks, but this heli tab is still pretty solid. You get sidewinders for AA, even if you're in an emergency, if you're trying to open up. Like you could, if you open up in the beginning, you could send 2 Super Cobras paired with an Osprey or like a Blackhawk, and then just send it to your cap in the center. Fly this at low altitude if it's getting engaged on or something, so everything inside should survive. But, you know, they did say that the more HP you have, the more likely the units inside are going to survive. So I definitely think the Osprey is better. It also flies faster. For the air tab, nothing has really changed here. This is completely up to you. Because, like, yeah, sure, like, they actually buffed air to air by giving them 0 aim time as well. So if you are a bit more, like, since you're playing frontline, I actually don't recommend dumping planes that much. The most I would suggest doing is probably having a couple seed planes and maybe ASF, and that's about it. But, you know, this is totally up to you. If you like spamming planes, even if you play the meat grinder point, then sure, go ahead. So that's about it for the first deck. You can take screenshots if you like. I have them on my Discord as well. The second will be on flanks. I still pulled out a flank deck for Baltics, but I'm not going to go through too much of it because I personally think that this one is a bit too flexible. You know, it has a bit of too much. It has a bit of everything. It has tanks. It has the Vilkas that are actually more emphasized. I mean, you need wheeled vehicles on flanks. The CV90s, you can even upgrade them to Mark 4s, and the only thing here is that on the flanks you get to choose, right? You get to choose between standoff RC or close quarters. You can run the 8 RC build, which is basically Jaegers plus close combat RC. The SDT are good, and you could try something which is basically the Green Brave Punishers, which have really good anti-infantry, and then pair them with like an ATGM team like the SD Scouts. So like you have 10 dudes and then you put them inside an M113 or a War Pig. It's up to you. But yeah, I think this deck, even though like it is pretty good. You know, if you think about it, you have two Raptors that are uh, quite scary. They actually unlock the limit where you used to only be able. Why can't I apply? What happened to my camos? My camos are oh okay, they're still here. Hey, I got a cool camo. Anyways, like you can now be able to fire 2 JADAMs and then 1 AMRAM. Compared to before, you only could shoot one JADAM at a time. So, this is actually really impressive air tab if you think about it, because normally, soft plus like striker sucks now. Soft plus armored, you cannot run an air tab like this. So, uh, I still think this has potential, but it's not personally my jam, so I made something. Okay, this is still a center deck. Dang it. I'm a fraud. Okay, maybe I should spend a bit more time talking about it. But on flanks, you just want to remember one thing, all right? You have the really cheap spikes that got buffed. These are really good, much better than the Ranger javelins themselves. They're cheaper. Yes, there's 4-man squad, but more range, faster. They don't get the MGs, but I think that's fine. And then even if you need, sorry, did that go through? Yeah, it did go through. Sorry for the Discord ping. But um, with the addition of the long range SOF and SD Scouts, the spikes, and a really good standoff capabilities, if you're playing on a flank like the on dead center and you're just basically AFK, I mean after you held your cap and you're basically just playing the recon game, the standoff capabilities of these units are really fantastic. You should try them out. And if something really does go wrong in your cap, send in like a Delta Force or some CQC infantry. You can even scatter these guys around inside or around the flank. So to me, I think this deck is really annoying on the flank to deal with. And I definitely didn't say that because I didn't actually have a flank deck ready. But anyways, the third one. Sorry, guys. So the third one is the classic armored SOF, and nothing has really changed actually. Besides, like this is still a good solid deck that is good for like anything. And to me, uh, it's basically the same stuff. You know, the only difference, and since you know we're at it, the only problem with this deck previously was the inability to resupply or like the lack of good supply trucks. So you know, as you can see, this truck is really sluggish, and if you had needed to resupply your infantry, you would have to go all the way back to supply dumps, unload them, reload them after they're done, and then you can finally move back to the front, which for a mechanized force and not wheeled, it does diminish your field presence on the front line, regardless of where you are. So the addition of this new mechanic where you can resupply infantry, unfortunately or fortunately, for depending on who you are, resupply is now infinite. which is kind of weird, but they do resupply and heal slower, so it's kind of, I mean, I don't know about this one, but um, anyways, you could last on the front line longer because of this. You could basically just retreat your infantry as long as they don't die, put them inside, don't even have to move them like all the way to the back line, you just leave them inside this truck for like, you know, a selective period of time, and then they're gonna heal up, and they're gonna be fine, and then they can just basically keep fighting. They can keep fighting, and you know it's really good. I think this is really a fantastic deck if you want to try it out. The reason I'm using RCs, standoff RCs, because in some maps, you do need a bit of standoff and AT. So this is a good combination. Like you have this for hopping from building to building. If you bumped into a tougher opponent, calling the assault breacher, you have Delta Force inside AMPVs, you have Pararescue plus Miles or Mech Engineers plus Pararescue. Like you have like these three squads are the bread and butter of breaching buildings against their opponents. And if you happen to like be goofing around doing some harassment on the front line, then standoff RC should do the job. But you can still go for close quarters. That's up to you. The only thing you should be afraid of is TOS and maybe big bombas, but just make sure that you have like Pack 3s, Raptors, and back loitering, although this is a really expensive plane, so maybe if you're playing frontline rather than on the flank, then maybe you can drop this for something else. But yeah, that should be it for all the US decks. I hope, you know, hope you find some inspiration. And now let's hop into the Russian ones. The first one is actually for the center flank. This is for Guards VDV, good old classic. The biggest change, or biggest, I mean, you know, I'm quite shocked about this, but apparently this is the only tank in the game where you can sneak, and it's not just it's not just oh this tank is the T90M is now sneakier. No, if you use this thing and you upgrade it to the the better optic system, like the one that doesn't have it, then Nikita does not have the sneak ability, but the upgraded one does. So if you use this and you fight your opponent's tank and use this ability, yes, you do go slower, but your opponent's tank spots you out in the open, okay, this is out in the open, at around 680 meters. Is it 680 meters? Around 680 meters. So, I mean, if you look at it, it's absolutely crazy. You have so much flexibility when it comes to abusing this ability. Like, you can basically be, like, not be spotted at all, face check your opponent 800 meters away, blast him in the face, smoke up, and then run away, and then just keep repeating it. And your opponent can't do anything about it. So this tank is really good. Like, ATGMs might, like, even if your opponent spots it, their ATGMs might not be in position to actually shoot at it. Which is why I also think this tank is just busted right now. But I still haven't tried it out yet, but I still definitely think that guards, guards are back, baby. Guards are back. And if you ask me why this is a center deck, I could just tell you why, and the simple answer is that you have 3 different squads with thermobaric weapons, right? Actually, it's not, sorry, it's 2, but you could bring 3. So, you have the Sturmoviki, which is a really good 600 meter, I mean, a good standoff squad that deals with infantry and pops APS. You have the VDV Spetsnaz that I think Burr would be good still. Burr is still pretty good, although it doesn't really have it. This isn't really a specialization with shotguns and stuff. So ultimately, when you try to fight your opponents like SOF, try to breach the buildings, you will have some issues. So that's when you actually need to bring out the TOS, which you always have. Like, yeah, sure, it did get like most MLRS's resupply time got doubled, but it's whatever. The TOS is still strong as fuck. So. The VDV Sturm is actually not the same as the one on the PTE. It is no longer a dual purpose, but rather this is basically the same thing as the one you can find. I'm just going to quickly show you. Engineer Sturmoviki. Okay, so you have this. Oops. Okay, so these two are basically the same thing. So you only get one launcher though, but it's still really impressive. And I did test this out earlier, but 2 VDV Sturm can beat 1 Delta squad, assuming that it's in the forest or something. So that's actually really scary. And I think, like, if you just run 8 VDV Sturms, and then if you happen to need AT just bring out the VDV Resvedka inside of the like this is good. This is good. You just run Resvedka. They also have pretty good penetration. This is good in force and stuff. And then bring them inside the like BTR MDM. You still do have the option to run the better, longer ranged guards Moto. I think this is also definitely viable, but this is just to simplify the deck. Right? You don't really have to run in anything I run. You can just do whatever you want. You know, you just copy my deck and you start doing changes that you like. And still, you still have the really strong VDV Cornet that probably gives a lot of new players nightmares, and the Verba, which is really, really good now because, well, it's not buffed in any way, but because again, the Killer Egg got no longer has any armor, so the 8 damage is able to one tap them. So you only bring a couple in case something bad happens. You can even put 2 inside of like let's say you open. This is something I always open up with. I always open up with 2 with 1 Kurganet and put 2 Verbas inside. So even if you're on the flank, guard is good. And the Kurganets is here because it's a really good standoff vehicle that can basically torture infantry inside buildings and stuff. Not a good CQC vehicle though, so for that we have the Terminator that is now buffed. We have the Babars, although personally I do prefer the Terminator over any of these, over the Babars, because nowadays the Babars, even though yes, the Kinjal model, the 57mm, does cost less, I still think that, like, first of all, tanks are meta now, and not IVs, not so much IVs anymore, and on top of that, like, you wouldn't really be flanking a tank with the Babars. You'd just be running infantry at it. And still, inside of forest, the Terminator and Babars both are good, but the AGLs are probably gonna deal more damage. So, I think if you happen to need some anti-infantry inside forest or stuff, the Terminator definitely is definitely a vehicle that's capable of, you know, dealing with them, dealing with your problems. And if you happen to be playing a urban map in the middle, then the T80M Drozdy 2 Drozdy is a good opener tank. You just open up with this thing and then, or a Babar is up to you, but I think tanks are ultimately better nowadays, especially because of the tank gun buffs. You can basically two-shot any IVs, and if you want, then you can bring 2, that's up to you. And ultimately, I know it's kind of funny I brought 2 Armadas, but it got buffed so much. Like, it's so good now, and I think if you happen to be new to the game, or you're rather inexperienced, or you want to just get an idea of, oh, how good are tanks now? Well, you should definitely try the Armada, because people are probably going to be complaining about the Armada in the next couple days. But maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. But you always want to bring up armor on it, because the F-35 with the 2,000-pound bomb is actually not able to one-shot the T-14. The only vehicle in the game that can actually withstand a 2,000-pound bomb to the roof is the Armada with armor. So you always want to run this. You want to make sure you have it. And I think that's it for the vehicle tab. The support tab, not much has changed as well, besides the book. I mean, well, besides Sam's and some other MLRs nerfs, but I think this has basically remained the same. I've made a lot of videos about Guards VDV, and the support tab has always been basically the same thing ever since the launch of the game. So, I think for the heli tab, this is a weaker tab when it comes to dealing with US's helicopters, but assuming you're not on the flank, you don't really need to use the really expensive like AA helicopters to deal with killer eggs anymore, so I think you should be in the clear. You still have Verbas to deal with killer eggs if your opponent is running soft in the middle, so that's fine. And you still have the Vickers and even a really big helicopter in case you need some supplies and stuff. And last but not least is just the air tab. This is just 2 ASF planes, and not the best configuration because, you know, if you're in the center, you're probably playing more ground than normal. And then ultimately, if you do need that extra bomba, the Su-34 is gonna like satisfy your needs because like it gets 2 seed missiles that can deal with SAMs, and then to deal with the new overkill system, and then you still have a Fab 3000 which is blast everything. And yes, it might get, you know, shot down by an ASF, but we'll see. Maybe usually it should get the bombs off. We'll see. So yeah, and for the flank, let me take a quick sip. For the flank, I think, like, even though I'm saying that Guards VDV. Like I made a center deck for like for Guards VDV. I still think both of these are like you can swap between the two because of how flexible they are. You get to choose if you want like more CQC or you want more AT. And even on the flank, Guards is not that bad. And same goes for same goes for like this deck on the center. So, but since we're on the flank, I guess I'll talk about the flank a little bit more. Um, so we have I think the GRU, Spetsnaz GRU nowadays is no longer like it did get a bit of a buff. 10 points cheaper if you run the mixed version, same price if you run the AA, and a bit more expensive if you run actually a bit cheaper, you know, it's 5 points cheaper than previously if you run the AT. The reason you want to run mixed, it's not just because it's cheaper, right? It's because you can now resupply inside IVs or near them. And so let's say you take out a couple helicopters with the Spetsnaz group, and then, oh no, there's one more coming, then yeah, I mean, like, you can always just pop them inside the vehicle, have them quickly resupply the Verbas, and then they can still keep fighting. So in this meta or in this patch, it's actually more important to ensure your vehicle's safety, your troop transport safety, than the infantry itself, in some degree, because as long as the troop transport is alive, you can keep fighting. And yes, the Spetsnaz group does have, like, I mean, the mixed version does have less RPGs, although still enough to deal with most threats. What you could do if you're really concerned or if your opponent has an emphasis on using vehicles as their flank recon, you could mix in some more Sky Razvedka that now have one more RPG 27, and it is like really good. Like they are basically the same as the Moz, but you know, a bit less range. And I think if you pair these two together on the flank, your opponent is not going to be able to like to properly infiltrate you with any infantry or tanks or vehicles in general, or even helicopters. And that also brings us to the PRP 5K. This or a lot of the vehicles if in the recon tab now have the ability to go stealthy, just like the ATGMs. And the fun thing about this is that once this thing goes stealthy, it is like once you press this button, the sneak ability, it is basically as stealthy as a sniper. If a sniper spots this inside a tree line, your vehicle also spots a sniper. That's how crazy this is. And but I think like now that they gave these like recon vehicles, like you know, you can basically just dig a hole and shove it inside the hole, and you only use the optics to spot things. They definitely have a role now, and it's really nice that you know they now have something else to do. And for the infantry tab, it is a bit of a shame that you no longer like you don't have the Verbas. I mean, you still have them on the GRU, which is nice. So I mean, if you happen to run into like someone with Guardians or Eagle or like Apaches or maybe Vipers, helicopters basically, you still have the manpads with 2 launchers that is still good enough to deal with them. And for like the flank, I mean for like your point, you have the SSO that is really good at standoff. And even if you don't run them on standoff and you want to go for the CQC, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I mean, they now have shotguns as well, which is really impressive. Before they didn't, and that's why I think I didn't like the CQC SSO that much. But now they are standoff, and now they have shotguns, so that's also really nice. But if you're on the flank and you don't feel like playing CQC with your opponent and forced, then run the standoff SSO. This is still a really good squad. And the Trini Brady is also your good, like if you need CQC, you can always rely on the Trini Bradys. So Bereti, I don't know if I pronounce that wrong, but this is the good old clown car strategy still works. You have the Morskaya and the Trini Brady inside of BT3F. So if you happen to need some kind of CQC, then it's always good to run a couple of these around. And now that the BT3F can actually resupply inventory, always remember to also like if the transport die and infantry are still inside, the infantry also get shocked and panicked, so that's also not great. So what you want to do with any troop transport is to always unload the infantry before they get into combat, if possible. You know, it's not always you know, it's not always ideal situations. So, and you know, after the fight, since this is such a good combo, you normally survive to put them back into the B3F and then retreat. So this is definitely good, a good combo, regardless of you being on a flank or in the middle of the map. You still have some cornets, both HE and anti-tank, and man pads. And last but not least, this is the probably, well, not as good as the Armada, but still like on par with American tanks, the T80 BVM. And I was only introduced to this tank because of, I mean, definitely on War Thunder because I don't play that game, but it's really impressive because not only are tanks buffed, their tank damage basically, two-shotting almost everything, the autoloader also helps it engage against enemy tanks. So like if you're against a US opponent in close range, the BVM will actually be able of winning almost every fight because of the autoloader, unless the loader gets damaged. And the reason why I run the 2018 one is because if you run the 2017 one, it can die to a JSOW. So you could run this. You could even go for the most expensive one. That's up to you. But yeah, that's up to you. And if you're on the flank, I would prefer using the S300. Sorry, mainly because you get to you have 2 missiles per target. The missiles are terminal guidance. If you're in the middle of the map, then I would tend to go for the S300 for more range to deal with enemy planes. And but basically, since US does have more F-35 stealth jets, you would prefer to have terminal guidance. And if you're playing coastal, I think the S350 is also definitely better because it's the fastest SAM for Russia, basically. Try not to put them in tree lines because they're really slow, and that's the general idea. And because you're on the flank, you could just buy a Smirch and a Grad, and then just helping your allies, helping the middle of the map with your artillery pieces, and then safely resupplying back in your backline where you just you play standoff against your opponent. The VMFs are really good anti-infantry squads. Use the Grus, Moskvas, or Zvedkas to help you hold off helicopters and infantry. Sorry, not infantry, vehicles. And then if your opponent brings out tanks, you have a couple options. Same with CQC, and ultimately, I still haven't mentioned this, which is why I think motorized is good on the flanks now, is because the Mi-24P Phantom. This is the only helicopter that Russia has access to that can one-tap killer eggs. And the only issue with this helicopter, or maybe two, is that first, you only get 2 of them. That was not a pun intended, but you only get 2 of these, so you really need to make sure you don't lose them. And the second issue is that they only have 1200 optics, and or like 1600 low altitude, which is really not ideal. So what you want to do is to use, like, even though this is a good helicopter, you want to use them defensively, or you have something else escorted. So you could use a really cheap Mi-24K, use it to scout the flanks, and if it runs into killer eggs, you use the Mi-24Ps right behind them, and then you just tap the killer eggs, and then yeah, voila, you don't need to worry about killer eggs anymore. But still, I'd prefer you to use these defensively because you only get 2 and they're still rather expensive. And on top of that, you have the Russia's version of the Guardian, basically. Quite impressive, although it doesn't really deal that much damage. It is a beast at fighting tanks. Why does it need 1000 pen though? I don't get it. It's even top attack, but I don't know. And still something quite decent, and also along with the transport helicopters that still gives you a bunch of supplies if you happen to need to resupply your helicopters in a pinch. So yeah, that's about it. And finally, the air tab. And I understand that people who play coastal do prefer to use like ballistic missiles paired with the seed. You do have that option. On top of the fact that the Iskander with 4 cruise missiles, why did they do this? I don't know. But it actually has the shortest resupply time on the Iskander for some reason. I don't know. But you could try this. And then you pair the Iskander with the MiG-29 with seed. And this thing would cost like 340. But I'm not that kind of player. I would just prefer to run these as run this as an ASF and just play the game. So this is still up to you. Now you have the freedom to do so. So you have a seed plane you can pair with Iskanders. You still have the MP, and you get the Tu-22. So if you happen to enjoy cruise missiles, sure, go ahead and edit your deck to make it like to have two Tu-22 M3s like this, and then a seed plane, and then like just drop all these, and maybe this, and then run two Iskanders. Like, boom. This is gonna be cancer shit to deal with if you're fighting your opponent, but if you want to be a bit more, if you don't want to be so cruel, then you can definitely run the SMT and two Tu-20 Su-24s. So this combo is actually pretty crazy. You have this plane which basically erases any infantry and troop transport, and you like this has been pretty cancer on the PT. Although now here it's also almost just as expensive, but still really effective at dealing with infantry in case something goes wrong for your team. So if your teammate needs some infantry dead, unless it's like, in case of a breakthrough, in case of a broken arrow situation, send in the SMT or the M2. Like, this is for tanks, this is for infantry. And then like I also have a fighter up, so that should deal with in case I actually need a fighter. But normally on the flanks you would prefer to have like a VDV teammate, like a teammate with a VDV to help you with your problems. Or just don't use planes. But yeah, that's about it. So that's about it for the 3 US decks and 2 Russia decks. I will be making more decks, but I think for now I do need to go back and make my patch notes guide. And yeah, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please let me down below in the comments, maybe like or subscribe, whatever. I don't really care. But if you have any ideas for me, for what to make on the next video, please comment below. Thank you for everyone to support that supports this channel. I'm yet to come up with a solid idea of what I feel about the patch, but I definitely think it's gonna make things really fresh for us. So to that, I think a happy anniversary, Broken Arrow. So take care, everyone, and see you next time. Bye bye.